The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Triversity Talk. Thank you for being with us tonight on Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Wendy, Stuart, Kaplan, and co-host Simone, Kraus. Hey, Simone, how are you?
Better than I should be. It's been a busy week for me.
I like that. That's a good answer. What's going on with you this week? Can you share?
When we had our former guest, Marissa from Browsing Around, she ended up doing permanent eyeliner for me.
Oh my gosh, wait, this is huge. Okay, so you got right up to the camera. Let me see. Oh my gosh, that's really great.
Yes, she does medical tattooing, so she did that for me, and it just, I'm ecstatic about it. But what's even better is, even though we didn't get a pride flag to fly at our town hall in the town of Vernon.
Right, I know you were trying to do that.
Board of Education had I'll tell you what, the cojones to take it on themselves to vote to fly a pride flag. And it's the first public building in Sussex County that will be flying a pride flag.
Yeah.
I applaud to them. I have a relative on the board, and applaud. It's just amazing that we've taken this big step, and especially in my town.
Wow, I know that's huge. You know what? I was going to say we take baby steps, but honestly, in your town, that is a milestone.
Yeah, and we didn't, and the LGBT community didn't even reach out to them to even ask or have any input. They just took it upon themselves. I mean,
what do you think it is? What do you think changed the mindset? Right, because everything we're hearing out there is, we feel like things have gone backwards, and in many ways they have. So what do you think changed the mindset?
We have more progressive people that are on the Board of Education. We don't have the people that want to ban the books and everything like that. We have a very progressive Board of Education that spans the range from middle of the road to, very progressive. And it's a great thing. And they're willing to open their minds and their hearts and listen. So,
which is, congratulations on that. I wish it were that way in every other place in the country, right?
Yes, exactly.
Don't we? Especially with, we have so much coming up with Pride. There's so many Pride events, and this year, because it really is open, right? Many people are vaccinated. I know numbers are going up, but I'll go back to many people are vaccinated and boosted, and will be actually having marches, which is so amazing. Exactly. I know here in New York City, we have our big Pride March. It's the last Sunday of the month. And we have two Pride Marches here, as Simone knows. There's the regular NYC Pride, which used to be Heritage of Pride. And now there's the queer march. They call it the queer. It's got a lot of different names, but it's a different march. So it should be interesting to see how everything plays out this year, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a month to celebrate all our people that are advocates and activists. And I know we have a great guest tonight that falls into that category.
And you hit the nail. That was a great segue, Simone. Thank you. Because our guest tonight started as an activist early on. As a cisgender straight female, she staged a sit-in at her school in a small town in Colorado to honor Martin Luther King. Now, can you imagine, this was not being considered a holiday? So this person really, really put himself on the line at the time. And then, of course, has just led the way with love, compassion, advocacy, is a youth minister in the Methodist Church for the young LGBTQ plus people. And you know what? I have the nicest things to say about Xavier Francesco Saenz. I think I got the name right. Come on in. Okay, where is there? Where is our producer? Yes, Xavier. I got the name right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. I told you, I ask for very little these days. When I do these live streams, you know what? I've been humbled by live streams because TV is just so predictable, and you know the guest is going to be there, and there's 3 cameras and a whole bunch of people. Live stream's really different, right? We rely on one producer and the person that is coming onto the stream. And as Simone will attest, anything can happen to anybody at any time. We are happy to see your happy, smiling face. Where are you right now?
I am in Silverthorne, Colorado.
You're in Colorado. Okay. Well, at least we know your location. And we also know there's a little bit of a delay. But we don't let things like delays stop us, Simone, do we?
Not at all.
Because the show will go on no matter what. So you grew up in a small town in Colorado?
Yes, I'm Delta, Colorado. If you blink, you'll probably miss it. Been there all my life.
Wow.
It's, just a small, trying to get the word out that we do exist there, and we have places for people to go, safe places.
Oh my gosh. So I didn't realize you lived in the small town your entire life. And it's interesting because you're probably one of the first people we have had on the show from the LGBTQ plus community that actually came from a really small town. As you said, a town where you blink and you'll miss it. Well, because we hear from so many people, right? That they didn't feel safe, that they didn't fit. And certainly many people that transitioned had to get out of where they were. I love that you are still in the very place where you initially made a difference growing up. Can you tell us a little bit about I love the Martin Luther King Day story. So your school was not acknowledging Martin Luther King Day.
No, you basically, I guess they don't see people of color being brown. And so, I knew what Martin Luther King Jr. was about, what he stood for. And, talked to a couple friends and said, we shouldn't even be here today. And they're like, we should sit in the hallways. And we're like, yeah. And when the principal came out and said, well, who's responsible? They all pointed at me. And I didn't realize it was my first bit of activism. So
how old were you?
It's quite. What was that?
How old were you? What was your age?
I was a junior in high school.
Wow.
So I was about 15, 16 years old.
And, I'm curious, what was the demographic makeup in your school? What were people's backgrounds, would you say mostly? Well, Xavier's going to come back to us, I'm sure, any minute now. It really looks kind of hot in the car. It is interesting to me, Simone, that, coming from a small town, because you came from New Jersey, I came from the Bronx. And even in Jersey, we say Sussex is kind of small. But, it's not nearly as small as this.
No, we're 20 some odd thousand people, which would be a big town out in Colorado.
Right.
Oh, there he is.
There you go. Xavier, you're back. So you were a junior in high school, and and I was asking you, like, what was the demographic in your high school?
Primarily white. There were a lot of Hispanics, But that was about it. That's what I grew up with.
Right.
My mom was growing up there. Hispanics couldn't cross the train tracks after dark, and couldn't go swimming unless it was Sunday, because that's when they cleaned the pool. And that
Wow. You're just blowing me away by what you're telling me. And I can only imagine that there's other places that are also like that. Wow. Absolutely incredible. Really incredible.
These are the things that everyone really needs to hear.
No, I totally. That's why I said, we never had anybody from a small town that's still living in a small town, because to your point, Simone, this is the reason that people leave places like that.
Exactly. They leave Milford, they leave Sussex County
Yeah.
because of the way it is.
Yes, absolutely. How are we doing there, Xavier? You're back with us.
No, I've got all these bars. Doesn't bars, but no goodness for some reason.
Right. Okay. Well, at least you have some bars going on. We have to work with whatever bars you have there. So when you left high school, I'm sure you had made quite a mark as an activist in your town. Were you worried
More than
about?
I think.
Were you worried about being bullied?
Sometimes.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second.
Yeah, you worry about being bullied, but it's just what you have to do.
Right.
You don't really have much of a choice.
You don't have much of a choice. So, you have, you won the, I want to get this correct, the Cesar Chavez Foundation in Grand Junction Person of the Year. How do you get to that point when, like, you can say you're bullied, but you don't have much of a choice? How do you keep love and compassion in your heart?
I would have to say I was raised well.
You were raised well.
My parents may not have understood, but they always showed me love. They were always there for me. My sister is my rock, and
I love that.
I've been very blessed. So my sister has always been there for me, and I know I have a lot of faith. So I try to see the best that is out there.
Do you think that has really helped you, right, with forgiveness? Because we talk about bullying a lot, right, in the LGBTQ plus community. We talk about bullying as kids, and Simone will attest to this. So bullying doesn't stop as kids; it goes on as adults. What happens in the community, in the trans community in particular. I still see bullying all the time from other members of the LGBTQ community. They may not call it that, but that's, at the end of the day, that's what it is. How do you take the high road?
I have a trans child as well. And so I always try to make sure that I act in a way that somebody can't make me the bad person, although usually that happens anyway. But
Right.
trying to be the best version of myself that I can be every day, so that I can show the youth.
Well, so you can set an example, right, for the youth. That's not always so easy, though. It can really be difficult to do that, especially even when we read things in the media. I read things, they just make me angry, and sometimes I hold on to it. You feel that way, Simone.
Oh yeah, I mean, when Xavier comes back, I do have a question for him.
Yes, and he's back.
Okay, you're back. I have a question for you. Now that your child came out as trans, how was your first reaction? Because I remember when a writer that I know, Jennifer Finney Boylan, who transitioned, and then when her child came out and said, I'm transitioning to female, to my gender identity, it took her, it really knocked her backwards. It was like, wow. And she had a lot of the same emotions that cisgender people did when, their children came out to them. So it was kind of interesting. I was curious when Xavier gets back.
Right. As a parent, right? Like what? Yeah.
Exactly.
And Xavier is on his way back. I can feel it, Simone. This is like Star Trek, right? Where Scotty keeps beaming the guest up.
It's like we have to cross the continental divide.
Right. We have to go. Right. That's what we're doing here tonight. We're crossing the continental divide here. But yeah, that is a good question. We've talked to a lot of parents, right? And one of the things that really stuck out in my mind, I think it was the show we did with Dr. Ann, where she said, when the child comes out as trans, you grieve.
Yes.
You grieve. I never thought of it that way till she brought it that way.
Yeah. But it's interesting, the viewpoint that when you're trans and then your child comes out trans, does it knock you back a step or two? Like, oh.
Great question.
With me, no. It was you worry for them even more, but
Yes.
It makes you step up a lot more too. To be that better person and to find more role models for them as well.
Wonderful.
Now you're in a small town in Colorado. Are there role models there?
Oh, so many. We have a large community here.
You have a large community where you are, and that's brilliant to hear. And that's my stereotypic bad, right? Because I'm here in New York City or New Jersey where Simone is, and we, everybody's everything and it's all good, right? But we think in our heads, you get out of like the Northeast or California and everything is so scary everywhere. Thank you for telling the truth and putting it out here on this show today. I love that you have the support in your town. Now you're a minister.
Yeah, I'm a young people's minister.
You're young people. What made you choose to become the young people's minister?
Well, first I was asked, and that's it's been my dream to use my faith to help other people. And unfortunately, a lot of the people in the LGBTQIA2S+ community have been pushed away from the church, and I want to be there to tell them it's the people, it's not the church, it's not God, it's not Jesus,
right?
It's the people, and you're loved, and you're perfect just the way you are.
Right, and to have you to be able to communicate that to them. Although I will tell you from other shows we've done with people from the ministry, the Methodist Church really seems to be the most open. Am I correct when I say that?
It seems that way. They have a reconciling ministries, and they seem to be trying. But it all depends on the people in the church to take that action and to actually do its work.
Wow. And for
I was blessed with the Lutheran church that I belonged to. When our pastor left, we had a new pastor, and the council actually picked someone that was lesbian, and she is such a great pastor. And it was so comforting for me that when she took this position to come back, and in her first sermon, it's like I'm looking around because it's like, okay, are you really just talking to me, or is it just happening that way, that this is really, hitting me right in the heart? So yeah, I am so happy that you are leading for the young kids. That will give them faith, and that's something that people need.
Right. Well, yeah, to your point, Simone, people need faith, I think, with everything going on now more than ever. All right. I was talking about this with somebody today that I had on the other show that went through a tragic accident, and she's a speaker. And what she does is she's singer, speaker. She lifts people up. Okay. People that have experienced horrific traumas, right? And we were talking about, she just spoke in a high school in the Catskills, and she was very disabled by an accident that happened to her. These kids weren't, but these kids actually said to her that they were happy she was there because they needed to talk to somebody about how they're feeling. These were like 8 and 9-year-olds. I think with everything that's going out in the world from the pandemic, where it started, to the politics, horrific politics, to everything, I mean, my God, how do we run out of baby formula? Do you ever ask yourself that? Imagine being...
You really want an answer?
I mean, imagine, right, being the parent of a newborn baby. My daughter couldn't take regular formula. We had to buy this really special stuff. It was called Nutramigen, and it was expensive and it was hard to get. And there was one place that carried it. Anything else was horrible for her, the pain. So now you have parents with newborn babies and they can't get baby formula. How could this be in the United States of America?
Well, the previous administration changed the NAFTA agreement so that you couldn't import any baby formula from Mexico or Canada. So that's, and we didn't increase our production facilities. So when one of them went down because of some impure product, we didn't have a backup.
We had no backup
to change the NAFTA agreement. And it wasn't so simple. It was just saying, oh, we're going to now import it. So.
And I mean, look what happens, So I think when we talk about reconciling ministries and church, I think the churches, really, certain churches that I know we can count on to be there, especially for the youth, 100%, because these are very, very uncertain times. I mean,
Yes.
You turn on the TV, and which is something I had to stop doing. Because just when you think it can't get any more bizarre or worse, it does.
I was just talking about this today with someone saying, I actually think it was when the Fukushima earthquake hit, it shifted us over a half a dimension. So it's like, what's going on?
I know it's right, because you can't believe all the things that are going on out there right now.
Exactly. I had a Tai Chi instructor who told me, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah, well, that's really absolutely the least of it, that we live in interesting times. Well, we hope Xavier is okay, but I'm just going to go on with faith and the news, because that seems to be where we're going. So,
well, some of the things, because I look at a lot of our community is not very religious, and I understand it. Am I super religious even though I go back to church? Not really, more spiritual. I do tend to gain something out of it, more personal.
Tell me what it is so I'm super spiritual, but I don't go to church. I don't go to synagogue. I don't go to a house of worship. So tell me what it is, what you feel when you go to a house of worship, because I've never experienced or connected to it.
You know what I like? I like my church. It's kind of small. It has a lot of wood. Kind of reminds me of some sort of Viking, church or something.
Wait, hold up right there. You like your church because it's small and it has a lot of wood in it.
It's very, very Nordic, Right. It kind of looks at, when I die, I'm going to Valhalla type of thing. But it's more of a spiritual, meditative, and I like the ceremony, and I like what I get out of it, and I like the calmness that it brings me, and my self-reflection internally, looking at myself. It's healing for me.
It is healing. Is it the structure? Okay, so I'm going to ask a trick question, Simone. Is it the structure itself? I mean, I'm laughing about the wood, but I totally got what you said. Is it walking into that quiet? For lack of a better word, it's your safe space.
Yeah, yes, I like the structure, and I like the ceremony and the way it goes, and the same way as when I would walk in a martial arts dojo. You just kind of center yourself because you know what's at hand. Maybe like if you go for a walk in the woods and you do this like forest bathing and just soak in nature, you know? It's the same type of feeling.
Right. You know what? It's like spiritual church bathing. That's what you made me think of. What about the people that are someone like I've always shied away from organized religion per se, because for me, and this is again just my opinion, it's a hypocrisy that is often found in religion. I mean, I'm going to bring up the elephant in the room, but the children that were just shot in Texas, and you go on social media and you see, I cannot stand this phrase anymore, thoughts and prayers. I mean, come on, folks.
It's just a joke, thoughts and prayers. We remember when they had that one picture of the black man that was hung and then shot and then mutilated.
I remember.
And I think it was. We need to have a moment like that. I mean, I really hate to say it, but they need to show the bodies what that person did to these children, and that would shock people into like, this is outrageous. This is outrageous. I mean, the sad thing is these children were shot in the head, and now the parents have to do DNA tests so they can identify the child.
Right.
I mean, this is horrendous. I mean, and I'm a gun owner. You don't need an AR-15. That bullet, the only thing that thing's good for is hunting gophers.
Right.
I mean, you shoot a deer with that, you're going to wreck the meat. You might as well just throw the deer away.
But okay, but there's two issues here, right? The gun, right? And this person didn't have any history as far as we know, but in the preliminary, this is what's scary to me. No history of mental illness. And there's been a lot of that lately. I think the story that you knew about me that made national news was our famous voice teacher who taught everybody on Broadway, Barbara Goostern, walking out of her building, a girl that looked totally normal, shoving her to the ground. I thought initially to get a cab, shoves her to the ground, sees that Barbara's laying there bleeding and takes off. And actually was only a block away when the ambulance came and didn't come back. So I say to you, these are people, Simone, with no history of mental illness. So to your point, you're saying you got to show America the pictures, but
Right.
Will that even matter? People are desensitized.
I'm going to go to the trans thing. You have states right now that not only are banning the trans youth from any, blockers and hormones, but they now want to bring it up to the age of 26, saying a young adult's brain isn't fully formed at 26. Well, if you can't take hormones until 26, why should you be allowed to buy a gun, drive, smoke cigarettes, drink? It's ridiculous.
But we do know they're using the age of 26 as it's bull,
I know that. I mean, it's just to get around it, but it's just, the country, we're lost. Right. And until we take to the streets about this, it's never going to stop.
I tell you, I'm listening to what you're saying about take to the streets. And, I came out of the 60s, 70s. I'm very much a takes to the streets kind of person. But I really feel that the world has changed so much that I don't know if that is enough to do anything anymore. I really don't. To your point, show people pictures of what the results of shooting children actually are. And yet I have to say to myself, are we so desensitized that there's no connection to it? Is there no Case in point, okay? Oh my God, we're all over the map tonight, but that's why I love doing a show with you. I'm going to bring up the Ukraine, and you're probably thinking, what does the Ukraine have to do with any of this? And I'm going to tell you a lot, and I'm going to tell you why. Some of the pictures that came out of there, I saw cities that look like New York City, Jersey City, with the high rises that, go along the water there, identical. Right? With blown out windows, streets in rubble, and everything else. And I said to a couple of my friends, I'm like, I think what blew me away the most was those streets look like streets that I could have walked on anywhere. And they said, well, what do you mean? It's a different place. I said, it looks exactly like here. Exactly like here. Historical buildings, high-rise buildings, turned to rubble. All right. Cars like blown up. How could that not have reached people? How can that not me? And I just really feel it's, Simone, it's an image and it's out there. It didn't happen to them.
The images that are sticking in people's heads are the ones where they're showing someone actually getting killed. They're showing the bodies being dumped, mass graves.
Right.
That's connecting to people like, wow.
Wow, this really happened.
You know, I mean, you know, we're a society that has evolved to this point of, you know, we're so extreme and so divided.
Right.
You know, and it didn't happen overnight. It's a course of time, and it's got to play itself out. You have another 2 or 3 years of this till this plays out, and we know which way we're going.
But once it plays out, then where are we? Like, I can't even look. Okay. And let's just, to keep it interesting, like it was already a mess and going downhill. And then all of a sudden this viruses have been around forever. You know that as well as I do. And SARS has been around forever. And chicken, I was going to call it chicken fever, but you know, the bird flu, there were so many of them. Legionnaires virus. Why now, Simone? Why all of a sudden do we get something so unleashed? And, you know, for some of our friends in Milford, Pennsylvania, that just think that it's connected to politics, it is something that is happening all over the world. We didn't just make it up in the United States of America. The pandemic is a very real thing, and it's anywhere you go. How the hell did this happen on top of everything else?
You know, what happened? It was due to happen, a pandemic. It was due to happen.
Right.
It was the way we handled it that we had too many people that didn't want to get the vaccine and wanted to get the vaccine. Could you imagine when smallpox was running rampant,
right,
when they finally got in a vaccine, or polio, and people saying, I'm not getting that. And it would have just kept going. We'd still be dealing with smallpox.
Right.
You know, get the shots. Let's just kill this thing, bury the thing away.
Right.
And that's the only way it's going to happen. And governments around the world did not take the proper action for this. Nor did we have the capabilities to produce enough vaccines for how many billion people in the world.
And you are right. Thank you for saying around the world. And I hope whoever is listening, they understand this is a world problem. Okay. Not a let's go Brandon problem. It's a world problem. And you're 100% right. I point the finger at governments around the world. I mean, how naive could anyone be? I've spent time in African countries, you know, near Ebola, malaria, typhoid, things that we don't have here. And when there was first talk of this virus, December of 2019, that December, right? There was whisperings, and then we roll into January of 2020, and the whisperings get louder. You have to wonder what has changed in society, in the world, that nobody jumped on that like immediately. What is wrong with people?
You know, everyone was wearing a mask, and they're still, to me, I think they're still trying to figure this virus out. I mean, I remember when it first came out, I read about, and they were saying it's going to take 3 to 5 years, and we're going to have to go through a couple variations till it starts working its way down. And we've gone through enough variations that we can do one shot like vaccine that'll cover it all.
Exactly.
But wearing the mask, just having concern for a neighbor. I mean, I'm immune compromised.
Yes.
So even when, you know, COVID was down, I'd still wear a mask. You know how many times I'm in the supermarket and I get someone walking by, go Brandon. I'm thinking, like, I really want to take that bottle of Pepsi out, whack it in the back of the head, and just say, "Oh, he's doing well. He's doing well." Yeah.
Right. Or shake it up and take the top off and just watch it explode.
I mean, the thing is if you don't want to get the shots, let's just wear the mask. You know, try to think about your neighbor. Think about somebody else. Think about the elderly person down the street that might not be able to get the vaccine because they have so many reactions, or
Right.
you might give it to a coworker who takes it home to taking care of their elderly parent. It's just consideration for another human being. The world doesn't revolve around you.
Okay, so I'm bringing it full circle. Consideration for another human being. You go into your house of worship, that place that makes you feel great. And unfortunately, I don't know what happened to Xavier, but I know Xavier's out there, hopefully listening. We need more people like Xavier, right? That are going to go in, all right, and start to work with the youth, and certainly with LGBTQ youth. And when you can get them back into the church or a house of worship or any kind of faith, the base of everything at the end of the day is kindness. And whatever happened to love thy neighbor, or I am my brother, for lack of, I don't have a good pronoun for this, so I'm going to use the quote, I am my brother's keeper. What happened to those words?
They're empty words.
They're empty words.
The thing, okay, I came across finding out about Xavier from the show We're Here. And I know Ashley Rohrer, from the HBO, and I asked, hey, you got any good guests? And she put me in touch with Xavier. And he was in season 2, episode 8, the finale. And he had a small part there. And there was Dustin, who was differentially abled, had cerebral palsy, and was trans. And it's a great show because what it does is it empowers these people to feel better about themselves and really will take that next step. But seeing Xavier being like the drag father to Dustin was so touching.
Completely inspired.
These are the trans people we need, ones to stay out there invisible and help these young kids, so they have a positive,
Right.
figurehead, and Xavier did so much. I mean, I could go on and on about the show, but it's.
Well, you know what? I would like you to go on about this show because most people, like you and I, knew about it, right? Because you had put me in touch with them and I spoke to them. But tell us about the show and also where it's airing for people that want to see it.
Well, it's on HBO Max, and it's 3 drag queens that go to different towns, and they empower, different non-binary, transgender youth, people that are having a rough time. And they come out empowered and feeling better about themselves and know that they can now do something. And now I'm going to go back to the episode Xavier was in at the very end. There was this one.
Because we don't have Xavier, but we have the episode. We could talk about the episode. Why not?
Yeah, it was Taylor at the very end, and he played an androgynous character, even though he was a trans male. But at the very end, he was leaning over the fence talking to this young, probably about a 10, 11-year-old boy. And that kid was so excited and so empowered to see what was just shown in front of him. That child will now have a positive experience in his head.
Right.
So that when he runs into rough times, he'll be able to pull that good feeling up about myself and my community.
Right.
And it was Taylor, he gave that to him, like just doing drag. And he empowered himself. It's probably one of the most wonderful shows out there. I mean, they got some really good drag queens, but they have one on there, Bob the drag queen.
So I know Bob the drag queen. Bob the drag queen has actually got an upcoming show, and I should announce it at Don't Tell Mama in New York. I don't have the exact date. I've always loved Bob the drag queen. You know why I love Bob the drag queen? Because Bob the drag queen is big, and really is very masculine in many ways and delivers every word very deadpan and funny as hell. And there's nobody like Bob the drag queen.
Bob, okay, I was a pipe fitter for 40 years. Bob would have made a great pipe fitter.
Right?
He has that attitude and that air about him.
Right, he's wonderful.
I'd love to get a pair of welding gloves and a welding shield on. Here, strike that arc up. Show me what you can do.
That's hilarious. Let's see your stuff, Bob.
Exactly.
But as you know, Bob the drag queen in the drag world, in the LGBTQ world, everybody loves Bob the drag queen. So using role models like this on a show and going into small towns to give people something to identify with is absolutely brilliant.
It's great. You know what it is? If you can empower somebody that really needs that, so that they now have that feeling, that muscle memory, that'll carry them a long way in life. And it's really a priceless show for what it can do for people. And I look forward. I can't wait for season 3 when it comes out.
Right,
You know?
right.
And if Ashley, you're watching, I know because maybe
It's
Xavier
running on HBO Max.
Oh yeah, it's still you can catch the first 2 seasons on HBO Max.
Right.
I mean, we'll have to get Xavier back another time when he has a good connection.
Yes, well, of course we want Xavier back when he has a good connection, but we can also, talk about, I started the show talking about the sit-in that Xavier organized as a straight cisgender female. And then at somewhere in Xavier's life transitioned. I know Xavier identified lesbian. This is all from what I read. Of course, I wanted to talk with Xavier tonight, and we will in the future, but it's amazing. Has a blended family now, which is incredible.
Just what he's done for that community.
Right.
We need more people to be examples that they're doing things for others and not doing it for themselves. I mean.
Yeah, but Simone, most of the people, I believe as a society in the world, we're in transition now. This is definitely a transitory period. I asked you, where do you think we're going to be on the other side in 2 years? I don't know. I really don't. In my Wendy wishful thinking world, I'm hoping that I seem to be meeting people like Xavier. I had an incredible woman, Teresa Sorreo, on my show today. My God, has just went to Walter Reed Hospital where young men had been disfigured by IEDs. Okay, they're horrible the way they blow up. But what she calls them, this silent killer, because you don't see them. And it took her 4 years to get into Walter Reed because she wanted these young 22-year-olds in Walter Reed Hospital to see her after a horrible accident that happened years ago. She lost basically her entire right leg, but her right side, her hip, everything. And then went on to not only perform cabaret, write music, but she became a volunteer at Bellevue Hospital for the trauma ward. I mean, I could just go on and on about Teresa and sing her accolades, but what was the most incredible, the kinds of people we're talking about are the people that are getting out there and they want to make a difference. And some of these people have been traumatized in their lives, or like Xavier said, had very loving parents, an amazing sister, and bullying, none of that was going to get in the way of the essence of who the person is. But you know what, Simone? I call these people our soldiers of love. They're the soldiers of love that are really carrying it forward. And many of us say, well, there ain't no room for hate here. You know what? You really have to practice it. You have to think about it every day of your life.
Yeah, there's people out there. I had a martial arts instructor that said something once that, because a lot of martial arts instructors will hold back like the really good stuff, so they always have an advantage. But this one man taught in such a way, he taught everything he knew. And his thought was, I want my students to stand on my shoulders.
Brilliant.
To have more information, be ahead.
Right.
That's the way I look at being an advocate. I want all the youth to be able to stand on my shoulders, have a better head start on it.
Right.
But we all need to have that one person in our life that you really kind of mimic because you were so impressed by them. When I first got into trades, and I was almost laid off out of work, and it was really rough. And I was working for a guy named George Bunsen, old crusty guy that everyone didn't want to work with because he was
George Bunsen. If you're listening, we just called you crusty.
Oh no, he's just grizzled. He's passed on, but he treated me like I was his own child. Taught me things, and I admired the way he handles it. His word was his bond. you treat people the way you want to be treated, and you don't let anyone get picked on. You stand up for others. And if someone brings a fight to you, you might not win the fight, but you want to make them know that they were in one.
Right.
And
wow.
Well,
that
I
was
owe everything in my life to him. George Bunson. I think of him every day. I know that my father died when I was 14, so I never really got to know him that well.
This was your mentor, really.
And George taught me everything that my father could have taught me.
Right, right. And now I know how you pay it forward in the community, which is, and that's what people need to understand. You have some incredible mentor that's passing it down, standing on their shoulders. You can pay it forward, which is really what it's about.
If you could teach these little things to everybody, they don't have to listen exactly, but eventually that light bulb goes off down the road.
Yeah.
And, you might say something to somebody and you can see the look in their face, like, okay, yeah. And then down the road, maybe 2 or 3 years, the light bulb will go off and goes, man, that Wendy Stuart was right.
Right.
And it's a wonderful thing, that can happen. This is, I look at one thing. My wife's grandmother was like this. And that if you're gone for many years and people are still talking about you, you did good.
And there you go. And you know what? That is a perfect way to wrap up the show. If you're gone and people are still talking about you, then you did good. And anyone who's listening, please remember that. That was your grandmother's pearls of wisdom, Simone.
That was Mary's grandmother, Chucky.
Mary's grandmother, right. And Mary is Simone's wife, and she's an amazing person as well. Thank you, Simone. I always love co-hosting with you, because no matter what happens, and we all know in the world of streaming, anything can happen anytime. Xavier, Francisco, Saenz, we will get you back on the show again, because we really want to hear what you have to say. Thank you, everybody, for listening tonight. Take care of yourselves and do something kind for somebody tomorrow. Thank you all.